Hello everyone and welcome to today's live lesson. Today we're going to be doing a Scratch project for Earth and Moon orbits. This is a pre-recorded lesson, so we're not doing a live lesson today. I hope everyone's enjoying their Easter holidays. So let me show you what we're going to be doing today. So let me scroll down to the bottom. So we're going to be making a project in Scratch. It's not quite a game, it's not quite an animation, it's more kind of a science project where we're going to be programming the Earth's orbit, so make the Earth orbit around the Sun, and then we're going to make the Moon orbit around the Earth as the Earth orbits around the Sun, and then we're going to trace the trajectory or path of both of those, and it kind of makes a really cool effect as we can see on the screen. So that's what we're going to be making today. Okay, so let me go up to step number 1. And just to also say, so as this is a pre-recorded video, I'm just going to be working my way down through the steps. So after I demonstrate a step, if you want to just pause, go ahead and do the step yourself, come back to the video, press play again, and that's probably the best way to work your way down through the steps. Or if you're kind of comfortable enough just working your way or doing it yourself, looking at all the instructions in the steps, then work away that way. Okay, so it's a Scratch project, so we're going to create a new Scratch project, but first we need to open up the Scratch website. So click on the blue tip box and get the link to Scratch here. Click on Scratch, open up the Scratch website, and then click on Create to open up the project editor. Create a new project. So it takes a few seconds to load up, and then we can delete the cat sprite. We don't need the cat sprite for this. So I'm going to click on the little trash icon and then go back to my instructions. So that's step 1, creating the new project, Scratch project. Okay, so this is in space, so we're going to add in the stars backdrop. So again, you can see how to do this clicking on the little tip box if you want, but I'll show you how. So I'm going to go into the Scratch project again. So I have 2 tabs I'm working with, my instructions and my Scratch project. And let me get rid of my head here. And I'm going to go down to the bottom here and choose a backdrop. So I can click on space, so the space category here, and that'll show me all the space backdrops. So you can choose any one that kind of will look good for, you know, putting the sun and the Earth and Moon there. So maybe the galaxy, nebula, or the stars one are the ones I'd recommend, but you go ahead with what you want. I'm going to choose stars. Click on that and that will load the stars backdrop into my project. And now I can move on to step number 3. So here's where we're going to add in the sun. So we're just going to add in the ball sprite, and it's got a number of different costumes. So if we just choose the costume where it's kind of yellow orange, that kind of looks like the sun, we'll go with that. And the code that we're going to add to it is just to go to X0, Y0, and that's just going to make it go right into the center of our stage area, and that's exactly where we want it to go. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to get rid of my head so we can see what we're doing here. So I'm going to choose a sprite from the library, and I'm going to choose the ball sprite, and that should add it into my project. And now let's add in the code. So into events and get when green flag clicked, and then into motion and get a go to XY block. So that is a block for setting the X position and the Y position of the ball. So we're going to say 0 and 0. So X0, Y0, which is right in the center of the stage area. So you'll see when I run my code here by clicking the green flag, the ball goes into the center, or the sun goes into the center of my stage area. And let's just rename this sprite to be sun. So at the moment it's called ball. So if I click in here, get rid of that and type in sun, just to make it, you know, a bit more intuitive, a bit more to kind of make a bit more sense, we'll call that sprite the sun. Okay, so let's go into, or let's move on to step number 4. So now we're going to add in the Earth sprite. So, we're going to add in the Earth to our project, but we're going to use the ball sprite again. So as I mentioned, the ball sprite, it's got a number of different costumes. We're going to select the costume ball B, which is the kind of blue costume that looks like the Earth. We're going to shrink it down, so we're going to use set size to 30%, and we're going to set the position of it to be X0, which is in the middle, but Y 160, which is kind of up near the top. So let's go ahead and do this. So let's add in another sprite. So open up the sprite library, click on the ball sprite again, Give it a second to add in. We see the two of them there. I'm going to actually rename this one to be Earth. So I'm going to get rid of ball out of this one and rename it to be Earth. So now we've got Sun and Earth. And let's add in our code. So again, another when green flag clicked, but this time into looks, and we'll get switch costume 2. And we're going to say ball C. So actually, if I show you here, if I click on costumes up here, we can see all the different costumes. Oh, we want, sorry, not ball C, we want ball B here. So change that to be ball B. And then we're going to say set size to 30%. And then finally into motion and go to XY. And we'll say X0. So I'll show you now. X0 puts it in the middle. And then Y 160. Click on the green flag and that will put it up at the top. Okay, so that is adding in the Earth. And now that's, so far we've just been kind of setting up our project. Now what we're going to do is actually program the Earth to rotate around. So to do that, we need to actually put in a mathematical equation using the sine and cosine. So basically it just works out the radius of the circle that it needs to kind of orbit around the Earth. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable called start, and we're going to add in this code here underneath the go to X, Y block that we just added in. So we're going to say forever change start by 1. So that's kind of how fast it's going to move. You can kind of play around with that later on. And here's our equation. So we're going to say, we're going to set the X position and the Y position of the Earth sprite using the equation. So we're going to get this sine of start and multiply it by 160, and the cosine of start and multiply it by 160 for the Y position of it. Okay, so let's add in this code and see if it works. So I'm going to go into variables and get set my variable to 0, but we're going to change that to, oh, sorry, we need to, let me get rid of that again. We need to make a variable first of all. So click on the make a variable button and then type in start, S-T-A-R-T, and then drag in the set my variable to 0 and click on start. And then I'm going to go into the control toolbox and drag in a forever block. And then back into the variables toolbox and bring in change my variable by 1. And that goes inside the forever, but we're going to change that to be start, like so. And here's where we're going to add in our equation. So we need to set the X position and the Y position of the Earth, and we're putting that in a forever block. So it constantly is updating the position of the Earth. So I'm going to go into motion and get a go to XY block. And that goes inside the forever block. And then I'm going to go into the operators toolbox. And here I need to bring in 2 multiplication blocks. So it's the third one down in the operators toolbox. So I'll bring them in here and I'll zoom in and show you where they go. So one goes in for the X position and one goes in for the Y position. And then again into the operators toolbox, we're going to get the block right down the bottom. It says abs of and a text box. So we're going to bring in 2 of these again. So I'll drag them in here. We're going to change one to be the sine or sine, S-I-N, and then the other one to be cos for cosine. So the sine goes in the first block of the multiplication block for X, and the cosine goes in the first box of the multiplication block for Y, like so. So this is slightly complicated, but just take your time to make sure you add the blocks in the right places in the right order, and it should work fine. If it doesn't, just go back and check your code against the instructions, and you'll probably be able to spot where you went wrong. So, and then we just need to put in the start block into both of them and multiply by 160. So into the variables toolbox to get the start block. So we'll bring in 2 of those and I'll zoom in. So start goes in here, and then multiplied by 160 for both of them. So that's the equation for making the Earth rotate around the Sun. So I'm going to click on the green flag here See if it works. And there we go. We can see the Earth slowly rotating around the sun. Okay. So let's move on now where we're going to add in. So in step number 6, we're going to add in the moon. So again, we're going to use the ball sprite, but this time we're going to actually paint one of the costumes to be grey, to kind of white grey, to make it look like the moon. What we're going to do is set the size of it to be 5%, so it's even smaller than the Earth, and then set the position to be x0, y 180. So in the middle, but right up the top of the stage area. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. So we will open up our sprite library and add in another ball sprite. When it adds in here, let's just rename this to be moon. And now let's add in the code. So we're going to say events when green flag clicked. Looks, we're going to say switch costume to ball C. And now let's update that costume. Let's paint that costume to be grey. So I'm going to click on the costumes tab up here, choose ball C, that costume, choose the paint bucket tool, and then choose a kind of grey color. So just use the sliders to kind of choose a grey color. And then once you're happy with it, click on the ball and that will paint it all grey. Click back on code. So you're back to the code for the moon. And then what did we say? We said we're going to set the size to be 5%. So bring in set size to 100%, but change it to 5. So set size to 5%. And then we're going to make it go up to the top. So motion, go to X, Y, and we'll say X0, Y 160. So if I click on the green flag, we see, oh, sorry, is it Y 180? Y 180, so just update that. Click on the green flag and you see it goes right at the top there. Let me zoom in. You see it right at the top there. Okay. Now let's back to my instructions. So that's step 6 done. So we'll move on to step number 7. Okay, so for step number 7, we're going to program the moon's orbit. So again, we're going to be using another mathematical equation, another sum to work out the orbit of the moon. But it's slightly more complicated because not only is it going around the sun, as it's going around, it's also orbiting the Earth at the same time. So we just need to add in, we need to add on the x position of the Earth for calculating the x position of the moon as it orbits, and also the y position of the Earth to calculate the y position of the moon. So again, slightly complicated in the blocks that we're putting in. They need to go into the right places in the right order, but just take your time and you'll be able to do it. Okay, so we need to create a new variable called start moon. So let's go ahead and do that. So into variables and click on make a variable, and we're going to type in STARTMOON for start moon, and we will say set my variable to 0, but we'll change it to be start moon. So just to remind you that we're adding this into the moon sprite, so set start moon to 0, and then into the control toolbox and get a forever block, back into variables and get change my variable by 1, but change that to be start moon. So change start moon by 1. And then into the motion toolbox and get a go to XY block, and that goes inside the forever as well. And here's where we're going to be putting in our big long equation, our formula to work out the orbit of the moon. So let's go into the operators toolbox. So this time we're going to be bringing in 2 addition blocks first. So if we check our code, we see we're adding on, let me get rid of my head here, we're adding on the x position of the Earth and the y position of the Earth. So they're the first blocks that go in. So we're going to get 2 addition ones. They're the first blocks in the operators. Let's bring in 2 of those and put them in instead of x and y. So 2 additions in there. Then we're going to get 2 multiplication blocks from the operators toolbox. Bring them in, and they go in the first block of each of the 2 addition blocks, or the first text box of each of the 2 addition blocks. Then we're going to get 2 abs of 0 blocks, bring those in, and again change them to sine and cosine, and they go in the first boxes there for x and y. And then, I told you it was complicated, we're going to go into the variables toolbox and get 2 start moon blocks. Let's bring those both in, and they go into for sine of start moon and cosine of start moon, like so. And let me check my code. Then we need to say multiply by 20, and then get the x position of the Earth and the y position of the Earth. So we'll say multiply by 20. Zoom in so you can see, multiply by 20 and 20. And now we need to get the x position and the y position of the Earth. To do that, we go into the sensing toolbox, because we're going to sense where the Earth is and get the x and y position. And we're going to bring in this block here. It says backdrop hash of stage, or backdrop number of stage. So it might make sense at the start, but I'll show you why we're going to use this block. We're going to bring in 2 of these. Let me zoom in. So this block is used to get different kind of properties of different things like the stage or different sprites. So we need to get some properties of the Earth sprite. So we're going to click on the little white arrow here and choose the Earth for both of them. And that means we can get different values or different properties of the Earth that we can sense. So x position, y position, direction, costume, and so on. So we want x position in one and y position in the other. The x position goes in here and the y position goes in there. So it is a big long equation to work out the moon, but it should work, hopefully. So we'll go into full screen here and click on the green flag to see if it works. And we can see it going around, but that is not, should be orbiting the Earth. Let me check why that is not working. So sine of start moon. Multiply by 20 plus, oh, maybe it should be start. Oh, I see what I've missed out here. This is change start moon by 20. So this needs to be 20 in here. And you'll see in mine, I just have it at 1. So I'm going to change that 1 to be 20. And now take 2. This should hopefully work. Click on the green flag, and there we go. We can see the moon orbiting the Earth as the Earth orbits the sun, which looks pretty cool. Okay, so let's move on to the kind of final part of the project. So we're just going to trace the path of the Earth and the moon as they move through space. So to do that, we're going to add in the pen extension. And then basically what we're going to do is when green flag clicks, we're going to choose the color. We're going to set the pen to be up, so it's not tracing yet. And we're going to erase all, so anything in the previous run of the project will be erased. Then we're going to program the down arrow to make the pen go down and start tracing. The up arrow will pull it back up, so it stops tracing, and the C key on your keyboard will clear or erase all, or maybe you can program the E button if you want for erase all, if it makes a bit more sense to you. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. So in Scratch, I'm going to click on the extension. Oh, did that a bit fast. I'm going to click on the extensions button down here, bottom left, and I'm going to choose the pen extension, and that will add in the pen toolbox to my project. I'm going to click on the Earth sprite here because I'm going to program the Earth or trace the Earth's trajectory first. Okay, so here's the code. So when green flag clicked, into pen, and we'll set the pen color. Okay, for the Earth, I'm going to kind of choose a blue, and then we're going to say pen up and erase all. Okay, so at the start, just choose the color, pen is up, and we're erasing anything from the previous run of the project. Now let's program the down arrow and the up arrow and the E key. So into events, and bring in 3 when space key pressed blocks. So 1, 2, and 3. And we'll zoom in here a little bit, just arrange them. So we're going to program the down arrow, the up arrow, and the C key on our keyboard. So for the down arrow, we want to put the pen down. So into pen and get pen down. And for the up arrow, we're going to get pen up. We're going to program pen up. And for the C, another erase all. Okay, so let's see if this works. So when I click on the green flag, it's not tracing yet. So I press the down arrow, and there we go. We can see that blue line tracing the Earth's orbit. So if I press up arrow, it stops, down it starts, up it stops. So you can kind of put in whatever you want there. If I press C, it should clear it out. That all works perfectly, happy with that. And we'll move on to step number 9. We're going to do the same thing for the moon. So, except we'll just use a different color. So maybe the white or gray of the moon, whatever color you want. So you can see it's the same code. So here's a tip. Instead of creating these again for the moon, dragging and dropping them all in, you can actually just copy them across from one sprite to the next by just dragging and dropping them. So here's what I mean. So I'm going to grab this group of code here and I'm going to drop it into the moon sprite, and that creates a copy of it in the moon sprite. So now if I click on the moon sprite, we can see there's a copy of it here, and all I need to do is just change my color. So let's kind of get a gray color there. And let's drag in for the down arrow, up arrow, and C key as well. So drag each one of these in one by one to create a copy in the moon sprite. They get created in the same place, so you might want to just rearrange them so they kind of are spaced out a little bit, but that's it. That should work now. So if I go full screen, click on the green flag to get us started, down arrow, and we can see both the Earth and the moon's orbit are being traced with the different colors. Up arrow, it will stop. C, it will clear it. Down arrow again. Let's do a full orbit, a full rotation to see the trajectories or the paths of the Earth and the moon being traced. And when it joins up, it hopefully should join up perfectly. Fingers crossed. And there we go. Perfect orbit and a perfect trajectory path traced. I hope you agree that kind of looks pretty cool. So as I said at the start, Scratch isn't just for kind of creating music videos or games or things like that. You can create kind of science projects with it as well. So there's a whole range of things that you can program and code to create, not just in Scratch, but in lots of different things. Okay, so that is the project. I hope you enjoyed it. We have included a challenge at the end, and that is to add in something of your own idea into the project. So you might want to add in another planet and trace the trajectory of that, make it go faster or slower or something like that. Or some other idea that you might come up with yourself. But do try and come up with an idea and put your idea into your project. Try and code your idea and then share your project. So click on share your project here, follow the instructions to share your project, and then we'll be able to review them in the next live class. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the lesson, and I hope you have a good Easter holidays, and we will see you again soon. Bye.